Depreciation with presenters Grant Gabriel and Daniel Hall from Sage Software. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. Everyone is in listen-only mode, so if you have questions, please type them into the questions box on the screen and we will address them at the end of the session. If you need to step away, please do not put your phone on hold. If you have hold music, it will play for the attendees and you are already on mute. This webinar will be recorded and we will email out a copy to everyone within a few days. I will now turn it over to you, Grant.
Well, thank you very much for the introduction, and hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us. Again, my name is Grant Gabriel. I'm a solutions engineer with the Sage Fixed Assets team, and thank you again for joining us for today's presentation on the benefits of an integrated fixed asset solution. Now, there are a few questions that I hope to answer in today's presentation. First, what is the cost of maintaining your fixed assets without a dedicated solution? Next, what are the benefits to integrating your fixed asset solution with your Sage CRE system? And then finally, what does that integration actually look like? Now, in order to answer those questions, we're going to discuss a few topics today, starting with the cost of spreadsheets, as well as a quick look at the Sage Fixed Assets Depreciation solution and how it can help you overcome some of those costs, examining the benefits of an integrated solution, and then finally, we're going to take a walkthrough of the integration between Sage Fixed Assets Depreciation and Sage CRE. So let's go ahead and get started with spreadsheet dangers. If you don't have a dedicated fixed asset software solution, there's a very good chance that you're managing assets by hand in Excel. So what do I mean by spreadsheet dangers? Well, spreadsheets are a common starting point for most businesses to begin managing their fixed assets. However, as time goes on and your growing business's needs expand, you add additional employees, the federal tax code continues to become more complex, and all of the dangers of using Excel become more and more apparent until it becomes a stressful source of major business challenges. Data control and integrity is difficult to maintain if you're managing your fixed assets in spreadsheets. Keeping spreadsheets up to date can start as a simple process, but then quickly grow into a time-consuming burden as they do not scale well with growing businesses. As your business expands, spreadsheets become more complex, using various formulas and cell dependencies so you can work with your data. Unfortunately, this leads to one or two individuals being the spreadsheet knowledge holder, and if those people leave the business and take that knowledge with them, it can have major impacts on productivity as you scramble to replace that gap in information. Additionally, spreadsheets allow the problem of version control to surface. If there are multiple versions of a spreadsheet being worked on, the consolidation and deduplication of the data on each version can end up taking more time than entering the data did in the first place. And finally, spreadsheets offer minimal security, access, and data entry control options, which opens the door to dirty data due to a lack of control. I want to take a moment to talk just a bit more about that final point on data integrity. The more manual processes involved in your fixed asset management, the larger the chance for bad data to enter into your asset information due to human error. This bad data leads to bad reports, and bad reports mean bad strategic business decisions. Next, if you don't have accurate asset counts and values, you may be overpaying on taxes and property insurance. Further, if you have bad asset counts, you may find that you don't have a business-critical asset on hand when it's needed to facilitate business. And finally, while clean data is your best friend and shield if auditors come knocking, dirty data is your worst enemy. Long story short, the lack of control and data integrity offered by spreadsheets is downright dangerous. A study by Tufts School of Business found that out of a selection of audited spreadsheets, 64% had errors, 7 of which exceeded $10 million in value. The Asset Management Resources Group has been assisting their clients' asset accounting efforts since 1989. AMR's research shows that 65% of fixed asset data is incomplete, inaccurate, or altogether missing, while 10 to 30% of fixed assets on the books are actually no longer owned or being used to contribute to the business. And finally, the Spreadsheet Research Group found that 30 to 90% of all spreadsheets they tested suffer from at least one major user error. In addition, none of the tests included spreadsheets with more than 200 line items, where the probability of error approaches 100%. So let's take a look at some real-world examples of the dangers of spreadsheets in action, beginning with Eastman Kodak Company. Kodak was forced to restate their financial reports for 2 whole quarters due to an erroneous spreadsheet. Similarly, Red Envelope Inc. ended up having their shares tumble 25% after they were forced to adjust their fourth quarter outlook due to a budgeting error that resulted from a single cell of an internal spreadsheet. So how can Sage Fixed Assets help you eliminate the risk of spreadsheets? Well, first and foremost, by putting checks and balances on data entry. Again, anytime manual processes are used to manipulate data, you run the risk of letting bad data into your asset registry due to human error. Sage's depreciation solution enables you to control the human factor, maintaining data integrity and saving time by automating processes. In addition to the baked-in tax laws and depreciation calculations, Sage's depreciation solution allows you to customize fields to not only meet your needs in regards to data, but also controlling if a field is a required field that must be completed in order to save an asset. In other words, no more holes in your spreadsheets. Or if you want to put an entry mask on a field to limit the type and number of characters that can be entered for that particular piece of information. Sage also allows you to create smart lists to further control data entry by creating a drop-down list of selections for any field, removing the chance for typos entirely. And finally, Sage's group and user permission structure allows you to control both what asset data users can see and what they can or cannot do when interacting with it. So let's take a bit of a closer look at exactly how the fixed asset solution can help you manage those things. Here we are looking at the actual Sage Fixed Assets depreciation solution. I want to go ahead and point out and show some of the functionality we just discussed and how it can help you to keep your information clean as compared to doing everything by hand in a spreadsheet. First and foremost, if I go to open a company, you'll notice that you can have multiple companies within the Sage solution. This provides a little bit more of a hard divide between sets of asset information if needed. Now, why might you do that? Well, after I've opened my company here, I can come in and actually create security profiles based on the company. In other words, if I want user 1 to only see company 1 and user 2 to only see company 2, I can use the security profiles to do that. I can even take it a step further, and I could create a group and permission structure where maybe one of my groups of users can't edit any information. Maybe they only come in and run reports. You have the ability to come in here and set for each group of users what they can or cannot do, all the way down to editing assets, running reports, or any other asset information that needs to be edited in any way. And you can change this on a line item by line item basis. So you can really control what your users can see and what your users can do with what they can see. You have a large number of options here to put that control back into your hands. Now, once we've set up our security to make sure that we don't have somebody going in and potentially accidentally or mismanipulating our asset information, now we can come back and take a look at the actual asset registry itself. Now, you'll notice that across the top, we have a large number of fields that are available for your usage here. And as I scroll over, you can see that a lot of this information is going to be filled out of the box based on what we see people tracking in regards to fixed assets. But as I get to the end, you'll see there's a large open space here. The reason is these are customizable fields that are not currently being used. However, the truth of the matter is every field that you see here can be customized to fit your needs. So why am I bringing this up? Because as we discussed on that last slide, it's in the customization options that you have the ability to put a lot more control over how people can interact with data. For example, here's our location field. First thing I could do if I want to is come in here and change the field entirely. If I don't want it to be location, I can change it to something else, or I could give it a new name. Once I've determined what the title of this field is based on the information that I'd like to be within it, I can adjust the view. Right now, this is a field anybody can come in and enter their information on. However, if coming from spreadsheets, you used to find that your location field was often neglected, and many times you had assets that didn't have that bit of information, I could choose to make this a required field, meaning that the asset cannot be saved until this particular field has been completed. That way you never have to worry about holes in your asset data again. You can mark fields as required as often as you like. Now, if this is information that you've already set up and you don't want anybody manipulating in any way, we could set a field to be view only. In other words, we can see the information in it, but we can't change it in any way, shape, or form. And finally, if this is an extra field that's not being used, we always have the ability to hide it so it's not cluttering up our workspace. And we could always come in and reactivate it at a later date if we find additional information about our assets that we'd like to track. Now, as it turns out, in this this group of assets for this company, we actually track our locations using 2-digit fields. For example, HQ for headquarters, MF for manufacturing, SL for sales. Because of that, we've set the entry mask to only accept 2 characters, because there should never be more than 2 characters entered into this field. Now, if we wanted to allow somebody to potentially write all of that information out, we could always adjust the characters to be a little bit longer and give them as much room as they need. Or maybe our entry mask is a combination of letters and numbers that denote the location as well as the type of store that we're looking at based on the business needs. I can actually take my entry mask to the next level and say, well, maybe we're going to start with 2 numbers, a dash, and then followed up by 4 letters. I can set the entry mask to only allow that sort of entry. Again, giving us additional control over the way that people input information into the system. In this case, though, we're going to keep it with our 2-digit entry mask that we've been working with. I also have the ability to enter in a default. Going with our location example, if you know that well over 50% of your assets are going to be at a single location, maybe we want our default to be headquarters. That way, whenever we enter in new asset information, we only have to change the location for that 50% of assets that are not at headquarters. We also have the ability to have a message in order to help somebody. If they're looking at a field and they don't quite know what needs to go into it, this message will pop up on hover to let them know what should be entered into the field. And last but certainly not least, we have the ability to activate and create smart lists. Smart lists are what allow you to have a whole lot of control over what people can enter into a particular field. In our location field right now, we've created a smart list that have 3 different locations, our headquarters, manufacturing, and sales. We've restricted entry to this list, and we have it automatically drop down as soon as somebody clicks into the field. So what does this mean exactly? It means that you literally cannot type information into this field. If there are only 3 potential locations, then there should never be something in this field other than one of these 3 options, and creating the smart list and restricting entry to it is exactly what the smart list will do. You cannot type into this field anything other than one of these 3 combinations of 2 characters, or you simply choose from the drop-down list which one fits your needs. And again, this removes the chance of human error or typos getting into your information. Smart lists are also very easy to build. I could build it manually. For example, maybe we have a second manufacturing center that we just built. I can go ahead and type in a new 2-digit code, give it a description, we'll call it manufacturing 2, and then add it to my smart list. Additionally, you don't even have to build these by hand. Let's say that you're importing all of your assets that were previously in Excel into the system. You don't have any smart lists at that point because the system is brand new. But since you already have information in these fields for each of your assets, you could click on the fill option, and it will automatically create the smart list based on the information that you've imported into the system. This does 2 things for you. First, it's going to build the smart list for you for future use. But let's say, going with our example here, that we imported our asset information and we only had 4 locations. If I then click on fill to create the smart list and I see 5 locations, it means that at least one of my assets had some bad information, a typo, or somebody entered in something wrong. I can use the smart list to then identify the one that's different from the others or the one that doesn't belong, and then use our system to find that, change it to the way it should be, and then remove that smart list option. So not only will it build the smart list for you, it'll also do a quick data validation, because if you see anything on that pre-built smart list that shouldn't be there, it means that there's information in your asset registry that also should not be there. The last thing that I want to talk about before we get back into the presentation and talk a little bit more about integration is, because we're talking about coming from spreadsheets, is how easy it is to get started. I can come into my system administration, and once I've created my company and set up some basic information, for example, the company's start date, some basic information on the books that we want to fill out, I could then come up here and select Import Assets into my company. This is going to walk us through a wizard-driven process of taking those spreadsheets full of assets and bringing them into the fixed assets system. The first thing that we're going to need to do is choose a source file. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my assets for import here out of my Excel document. Next, I need to choose which company within the fixed assets solution I'd like these new assets to be a part of. We're going to choose our sample U.S. company here. Next, are we going to be bringing new assets into the system, or are we using the import from Excel to update existing assets that are already within the Sage Fixed Assets database? For you, coming from spreadsheets, well, for most of you, I would imagine, you're going to be focused on bringing in new assets for the first time. Now it's asking us about field maps. Are we going to create a field map, or are we going to use a saved one? We're going to create a new field map to get started, and this will make more sense in just a moment. So this is where we actually have to map the fields. This is where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, in regards to pulling your assets in from an Excel spreadsheet. At the bottom here is a display of our source file, the assets that I want to import, what you're currently working with in your spreadsheets. Above that are all of the available fields within the fixed asset solution. And what I need to do is tell the system which column ties to which field. So looking at my source information, I see column A is my asset ID. I'm going to choose column A. I'm going to find my asset ID amidst all of my available fields, and I'm going to pair the two of those together. Column B is my description. So I'm going to find column B. I'm going to find my description. Nope, too far. And I'm going to pair the two of those together. And I'm going to go through and do that for every column in my source information, so that for each asset in your spreadsheet, the system knows where each column of information needs to go within the available fields that we've created. And note, your custom fields will show up here as well. So don't worry if you have very unique asset information to your business in your spreadsheet. You go ahead and customize the field first. For example, we were looking at location. And there's our location field. Anything that I would have changed that to is going to be available here as well. So you can set the company up to prepare for any unique information you have on your spreadsheet, and then map those fields as a part of this process. Additionally, if those of you out there are working with ERPs, for example, Sage CRE, any new assets added on that end could be exported into a spreadsheet and pulled into the system in the same manner. On that note, once you've created your field mapping, you don't have to do that every time. You could save the field map. That way, when we get to this step, instead of creating a field map, we can use a saved one. And now, all of our fields are already mapped, and we can skip this stage entirely and jump right into the validation. When I click on Validate, the system's simply going to make sure I'm not trying to force a date field into a financial field, and make sure that all of the information looks accurate. Assuming that it does, I can go ahead and click on Finish, and I've now brought all of those assets into my system. So pretty quick and easy to take your current spreadsheets and move them into the dedicated fixed asset solution. So we could go ahead and open that company back up. And if I go to my asset registry, I can see I have a large number of additional assets because I just imported about 80 on top of the 90 that were here. The last thing that I want to look at before we go back into the integration side is, again, we do everything that we can to prevent bad data from getting into your system. But we are human beings, and as such, mistakes can happen. So we also have some protection on the back end, and that is what we refer to as our audit advisor. What the audit advisor is going to do is you determine a book for it to review, and it's going to compare all of your asset information to all of the baked-in tax rules and regulations in the software, and basically do an audit review for you. So I'm going to go ahead and run that review. And it's going to bring up our audit advisor. You can see it's running a number of different reviews here against the information in your system. And it's going to let you know if it finds any exceptions that you might want to take a look at. Now, the software is not going to automatically change this for you, nor would you want it to. Of course, you want to review this information before any changes are made. Instead, it's going to tell you what the issue is. It's going to then give you a potential resolution. And then the system's going to make a group so that you can quickly find the asset or assets in question and review them and then make the change if you'd like. So if I go back into my software, I can close the Audit Advisor, go to my group dropdown, and there's the Audit Advisor group that was created. And here's the asset in question. And I can see, oh, actually it does have less than 100% business use. So now I can make the decision as to if we need to change that or if that's accurate because it's somebody's personal car that they're also using for company reasons. Either way, I can review it and make sure that the Audit Advisor is not going to give us an exception, nor that an actual auditor would give us an exception. So we do have things on the front end to prevent bad data from getting into the system. We make it easy to import your spreadsheets into the system to get started. And then we also have another thing on the back end just to make sure that the information in there is correct in relation to all of the tax rules, laws, and regulations baked into the software. So now let's go ahead and go back to our presentation here so that we can talk about the cost of maintaining fixed assets without a fixed asset software. In addition to ensuring that you have clean and accurate asset information using the features that we just looked at, our depreciation solution allows you to bring your fixed asset management in-house, providing better control at less cost as compared to outsourcing. Also, we take care of all the tax updates for you, so no need to have an internal CPA dedicated to maintaining asset compliance. We can handle that for you. Additionally, we surveyed our current depreciation users to ask them their main reasons for implementing a fixed asset software solution, as well as the benefits they found once the solution was in place. As you can see, the main reasons for bringing the solution in were to make the depreciation process easier and ensure tax compliance. After implementing the solution, customers found that they both saved time on the reporting processes as well as gained confidence in the compliance of their numbers. We also asked our customers how long it took them to realize a return on investment after implementing Sage Fixed Assets. As you can see, 71% realized a return in less than 3 months. I think this quote from one of our customers sums it up best. We had previously been using Excel spreadsheets, which was more time-consuming and had more potential for depreciation calculation errors. Sage Fixed Assets creates our journal entries automatically, and assets are very easy to input and keep track of. Reporting for period end and year end is quick and easy as well. You can see these survey results and more customer quotes by going to www.techvalidate.com and searching for Sage Fixed Assets. Okay, so we've spent a good amount of time talking about the depreciation process and its challenges. So what are the benefits to integrating your fixed asset solution to your Sage 300 CRE system? Well, first, let's take a look at the wider Sage ERP environment. As you can see, many of the Sage ERPs do not have a fixed asset module built in. Thankfully, Sage's depreciation solution offers out-of-the-box integrations back to most of Sage's ERP solutions in order to automatically move depreciation GL entries from depreciation into your ERP with no manual data entry. So what does this mean to you? Well, let's look at how the process flows when it's not integrated. Without the integrated solutions, there's a large number of manual processes needed to move your GL information back into Sage CRE after it's calculated within depreciation. And as we have discussed, anytime a manual process involving data is required, you open the door to dirty data. Additionally, these manual processes take more time from your people that could otherwise be spent on more pressing issues. So what does an integrated solution look like? When your depreciation solution is integrated to Sage CRE, your GL entries can flow freely between the solutions. Not only does this free up time that would otherwise be spent manually managing these processes, but the automation removes the human factor, ensuring that your data is accurate and error-free. So let's go ahead and take a look at this integration in action. So here we are again looking at the fixed asset solution. Now, first and foremost, for this integration to work, we need to make sure that the GL codes in depreciation match back to the GL codes in Sage 300 CRE. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at that. We're going to look at one of these assets in a bit more detail so that we can pull up the GL options here. And here's another example of a smart list. We built a smart list to control what GL codes we can use. And again, I can't type anything in here. And we also have the numbers set up to match the way that GLs are set up within the CRE solution. Next, in order to actually get the GL entries, we need to run depreciation. We're going to go ahead and run depreciation for 1 month. We'll do it on all complete assets for the tax and internal book. And as you can see right now, the system is not only calculating depreciation, but on the backside, it's also calculating the GL entries that will match the period for depreciation that you've run. Now, while we did it for a month here, you can set the depreciation to run on whatever time frame you choose, and the GL entries are going to match the time frame that you've chosen for the depreciation. After the depreciation's run, the system's going to show us our depreciation expense report, and of course, we can go ahead and review this, and after reviewing it, now that depreciation has been completed, we can go to our links drop-down where we begin all of our integration, and we're going to choose the Sage 300 construction link. It's going to close the company and then bring us into an integration interface. Now on this interface, we need to set up some additional information. First, we need to choose what company the information is coming from. We're going to choose the one that we just calculated depreciation on because we know that there are GL entries that need to be moved. We need to choose the group, and we did ours on all complete assets. And we need to choose the book. We're going to go ahead and pull the GL entries from the tax book. Now, very important, we need to go ahead and make sure that the period posting date as well as the journal entry date match exactly the run-through date for depreciation that we just ran. That's what lets the software know where the GL entries need to come from. And then finally, we need to provide a reference number so that we can easily identify this batch of GL entries within the Sage 300 CRE. Once this has been done, we're going to click on the preview button here, and it's going to show us a quick preview of what the credits and debits are going to look like for your GL entries. We want to review this and make sure that the numbers meet our expectations. And assuming that they do, we can come back into the integration interface and see that the ability to post is now highlighted. And we're going to go ahead and click that next. Now we need to choose which company within Sage 300 CRE we want these GL entries to flow to. So we're going to go ahead and choose this one here. Select OK to let the system know. And we need to enter in a batch ID as well as a journal number. So we'll go ahead and give it a batch ID so we can identify it, and the resulting journal number as well. We'll just enter 11. And finally, we'll click on Send. We'll get a quick notification letting us know that the journal entry was successfully posted to Sage 300 CRE. And now we need to change gears and look at the Sage CRE side. So here we are in Sage 300 CRE. And we're in the GL module, which is what we're looking at right here. First, we need to go to the Inquiry dropdown and choose Entries by Batch. We're going to select the new option for GL transactions. And once we click OK, we should see the GL postings that we just created and sent from Sage Fixed Assets. And here's that batch ID that we had used to identify it. We can go ahead and click into this once again just to confirm that both the debits and credits match, and these should be exactly what we saw on the preview within the fixed asset solution. Now we can exit out of the inquiry, assuming that everything here looks good, and we go to the Tasks dropdown in order to select the ability to post entries. We need to choose our ranges. And here again, we see that GL batch that we want to have posted. We can choose that and then click on OK to select it. And now we can click on Post. And what this does is post the entries as well as bring up the ability to either print or save a report. Now, I actually don't have a printer hooked up, which is why it's giving me the XPS, because that should be going to a printer. But you have the ability to save it as a PDF as well, or print the document out. At this point, the journal entries have been posted. But if we want to go ahead and take a look just to make sure that the entries are posted and they are what we want, we can now run an inquiry, but we'll do it for current instead of new. We can scroll on down to find one of our depreciation expense accounts here. So here's an accumulated depreciation. And we can see our entry here that was based on the batch that we pushed over, and it even says that the original application came from fixed assets. Now, we could certainly go through and double-check each of the accounts to make sure that they flowed over, but if we see it on the one and we saw it on all the previews, it's reasonable to assume that the credits and debits for all of those accounts that we tied to the GLs within fixed assets are going to flow over into Sage 300's GL system. So with that, I hope that you can see that integrating your fixed asset solution into your ERP solution will not only save you time and effort, but provide additional confidence that the asset data you're working with is accurate and up to date. And at this point, I want to go ahead and open the floor up to any questions that might have come across via chat as we were walking through both the fixed asset solution as well as the integration process.
If you have a question, please type it into the questions box on your screen. Right now, we don't have any.
And questions can be anything from Sage 300 CRE related to Sage Fixed Assets related, or talking about the ability to bridge the two.
Okay, it doesn't look like we have any questions, but if you do decide you have questions, you can always contact us afterward. Oh, here we go. Here's the question. If I'm using Sage 100 Contractor, is the Sage Fixed Assets a separate module?
Yes, Sage Fixed Asset is a separate module. It is a standalone solution, but it's designed to work out of box with a number of other Sage products. But the Fixed Asset Management solution is itself its own set of 4 modules. We looked at depreciation today, but there's also a tracking module for doing physical inventories of assets, a planning module for works in progress that need to be budgeted and tracked, and a reporting module. If the standard reports in the system aren't meeting your needs, it allows you to edit those reports or create reports from scratch.
Okay, so it does integrate with Sage 100.
Actually, integration for Sage 100 ERP is available out of box. Sage 100 Contractor, I do not believe is available right out of the box, but we do have a professional services group that can absolutely create those types of integrations. Sage 300 CRE, on the other hand, we absolutely have out-of-the-box integrations back to that, and that's what we just looked at today.
Okay. Any other questions out there? Is there a module for creating fixed assets rental charges to our projects?
From a rental charge standpoint, I believe we do have an equipment cost integration that is available for Sage 300 CRE, which I believe plays into that a little bit by judging the cost of equipment when used so that you can feed that back into an invoice type standpoint to know how much to charge. I can certainly pull up a little bit of additional information and send that along after the discussion. Outside of that integration, however, the fixed asset module itself does not include that. It'll certainly track all of the assets, run depreciation, tell you what they're doing, but it does not calculate any sort of, let's say, leasing payments or rent payments on top of that.
Okay. Jim, you're typing in something, but I don't understand what you're saying. So if you could type in a full question, I can read it. Okay, I think that's all the questions we have for today. That was one of our people asking a question. So we want to thank you all again for attending today's Lunch and Learn session. We will be emailing out the presentation to everyone. If you do have any other questions, please feel free to contact us at any time. This information will also be in the follow-up email. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Have a great afternoon.